This section has us looking at loan payments. With a loan, you've got a starting present value. You have payments that are decreasing that value, payments coming out of an account, paying off that loan. Then you have interest that's actually working against you. So it's a bit different from savings plans where you building up both the balance, building up the balance with both the payments and the interest. Instead, we're paying down a balance, but we're constantly working against it. They give you a graph here to sort of show you how that would look. At the very end, your payments are doing a lot more than at the beginning because there's less interest working against you as that principal goes down. We'll use the exact same formula that we used for savings payments. We can use the PMT formula. That is going to spit out a negative since it's a payment being taken out of an account. I usually put a negative in front for this video just because that way you're answering it the same way as the homework. But if you're going to use that in an application, for example, an amortization table, then you will want that to be deducted from an account. And I'll show you at the end of this video what that might look like. If you use previous videos, you already did a find payment spreadsheet, and that was for a savings plan. So that would have had a future value, but no present value. We can do something very similar to that. In fact, you can even just duplicate that sheet if you've done that before. I would say change this to find savings payment and call this one find loan payment. I'll just start with one row at first. And here the big difference is future value is going to be 0. And for example, looking at number 1, present value would be $4,500. I'll also put that 19% rate in there. It was monthly, I believe it was 4 years. Yes. So this future value is going to be 0. I'll leave it right there. I'm going to insert a column to the left of it though. And that's where I'm just going to move this present value over. Now, if you're starting from scratch, that's okay. I'll show you exactly what you need to set it up. I'm just going to move these over. I'll remove interest because that one's actually incorrect. It can't be a negative interest. That's only going to work for savings, not for the loans. So what you need if you're starting from scratch is these same columns: present value, future value, rate, and time, payment, total payments, and interest. The first several columns are all inputs, and then our payment is PMT. I put a negative in front of there, like I said, just to output a positive value instead of a deduction. We've got the rate divided by the payments per year. That's 19% divided by 12. So you can see the rate per month there. And then the next one is the total number of payments. I'm referencing these N and T cells, or number of compounds per year times number of years. Then I've got a present value input. That should be that starting amount of the loan. And a future value input. Typically we're going to pay that down to 0. And for all the homework, that's how we'll approach it. So now I've got that payment amount. My total payments should still be matched up with what I did in the previous video. Essentially, I'm looking at the number of total payments first, N times T, then multiplying it by the payment amount to get the total. And the interest will be the difference between the total number of payments and the amount borrowed, or present value. So total payments minus PV gives me that interest amount. And now I've created a spreadsheet that's going to work really well. I'll check my work here, 1958 and 43 cents. Apparently that's not right. Oh, that's the interest. Let's try that again. $134.55. There we go. So that problem just wanted to know the payment. That's how many of these are. Now let's change it to a $13,000 loan at 4% for 4 years. So the 12 and the 4 remain the same. and I updated the other information. And then to apply those same formulas, I'm just going to highlight them and use that fill down feature, bottom right corner of the cell, just dragging that down. And now I've got a $293.53 payment for my next problem. It's not until number 6 where you do need to find that interest amount. Number 7 adds a couple layers here, so let's take a look at this. We've got a home purchased for $400,000. The down payment is 24% of that. So they're actually only borrowing 76%. In other words, 100% minus 24% is 76%. They're financing 76% of 400. But we also want to answer questions like, how much did she spend on the down payment? And then we want to find her total payments plus the down payment to figure out the total cost of the house. Because we've got these couple of extra things, again, what I think might be best is to duplicate the sheet, and we'll call it find mortgage payment. And the things that we will potentially want to add here is we want a down payment, and maybe it would be good to add a couple columns to be able to handle that. First column I'm going to have here is the home price. Then we'll have the down payment percent. And when we take that home price times the down payment percent, we'll get the down payment amount. So I do need another column for that. And the next thing we'll want is the present value, which will be the price minus the down payment. So those will help take care of a step in the beginning. I'm going to fill in information from number 7 here. That was a $400,000 home at an 18% down payment, and the rest at 7% interest. And we had to make that percent column into percentages. It's showing dollars right now, so make sure that's formatted correctly. I don't need to see those zeros there. So I have an 18% down payment. The down payment amount is just going to be a product or a multiplication of those two. It gave me that suggestion. That's exactly what I want. You can hit tab or click on it to accept. I've got a $72,000 down payment. So I would be subtracting that off from the 400,000 to get the present value, or you could call it amount financed. Same goes for the last spreadsheet. Here the amount financed is going to be equal to the home price minus the down payment. Now from there, I do need to update this. I've got a 7% interest rate, 12 times a year for monthly, and most of these are 30-year mortgages that we're going to see. Payment should be correct as is. Let's double check it. We've got amount finance for a present value, paying down to 0. We got the rate divided by 12 first, then the number of years times 12, that's 360 total months, and our amount financed is the present value and the future value of 0. So those payments would be correct. That's the monthly mortgage payment. It is a negative. I flipped the sign just so I can copy and paste it into the homework like so. Oops, I actually put that in the wrong spot. The original amount financed, I did have that here. And then we're going to figure out the total money spent on the home for the last problem. We've got total payments there, and the interest will be accurate based on that. but we don't have the total spent. The total spent will be the total of the payments, which I already calculated, plus the original down payment, which is easy to forget about. So this is really more important to look at. It is a $400,000 home, but the total amount spent is well over double that, over $857,000. So really that home needs to go up in value for that really to be worthwhile to pay off all the way. I don't need that dollar sign there. And some people may find that they can refinance and go for a lower rate at a certain point as well. But now we've got this set up to be able to do similar problems. We've got this problem in number 8 where they give the payments. And you can still use this spreadsheet to double check that. $290,000, 16% down. That is in the wrong spot. Let's go over here. I just need to fill down that down payment cell. Need to fill down that amount finance cell. These are output cells. And then the rest of these are inputs again. So 0. I've got a rate of 5.2%. 12 and 30. Now the last 3 I should be able to fill down. Actually, all the last 4 I should be able to fill down. There's that payment, $1,337 and 63 cents. I didn't necessarily need to do that because they gave it, but it's nice because I've already programmed in a formula to find that total amount spent, and that's what it's looking for there. Other than that, these remaining problems are pretty similar. This last problem gets into revolving accounts like a credit card account. Even though there's only one problem like this, I am going to create a new spreadsheet for this. And I'll call this loan payoff. We're doing more than just finding the payments. We're kind of looking at what's happening with the loan as part of that process. And I can also use this for a mortgage. So I'll show you a couple examples, even though it's just that last problem. And the columns and information that we need here are first the previous balance. And with a revolving account, the way they've described this is that first the APR is applied and then a payment amount is calculated based on a percent of that. So we'll have a previous value, previous balance, and APR, that one's going to be a percentage. We'll use that to find a finance charge or interest. And then we'll have a payment percentage. APR is also a percentage there, if that helps. And then we'll have a new balance. They're not considering any new charges or credits to the account, but we would also, along the way, potentially add charges or spending and subtract credits, which could be refunds or payments or things like that, outside of the standard monthly payment. I think that's everything I need. I'll start with the balance of the loan. This one is $7,750. We'll find that we need to format that as a dollar amount. I can just make that whole column a dollar. My APR is 20% and the payment's 2%. With these, it helps to make it a percent first before you start typing. And now my finance charge is going to be the balance times the APR per month. So that's the APR divided by 12. And right away, I'll just check that amount there. Oh, I don't have that yet. I can't do that yet. So I'll need to find the monthly payment. Well, the payment's a percentage of the balance plus the finance charge. So I'll have a payment amount first, and then I'll do a new balance. The payment amount, like I said, what we need to do is 2% times the previous balance plus the finance charge. There's a nice way to do that, 2% of that total using parentheses. And now the new balance is the previous balance plus the finance charge minus the payment amount. Now this is a situation where actually, if I use that PMT, it would create a negative. And some people will just put that in as a negative. I think I put 2 negatives, which canceled. So if I did it that way, I could show the fact that the payment is deducting. However, I think it doesn't even really apply here because it's all money that is owed from top to bottom. So really, the balance, all of these are negatives, and it's just representing a debt amount. So there's different ways to interpret that, but I think the big thing is just make sure you're keeping track of, is it starting with the balance or ending with the balance? And then are the payments and interest working together or against each other? And that's how we're going to determine these formulas for adding and subtracting. Now let's go back in here. I did make a change, and so I want to undo that. I've got my previous balance plus my finance charge minus my payment, and that gives me that new balance. We'll try that out here. And now lastly, how much did his debt decrease by? We can make another column for that. The debt decrease is going to be the previous balance minus the new balance. Again, decrease is a negative, but we're just reporting everything as positive numbers for the sake of the assignment. And we could actually continue this process and create a table and watch this loan get paid off. Let's check out what that would look like. First, I would now use the new balance as a previous balance. So I'm in A3 under previous balance, I'm just going to do equals F2, and that just brings that amount down in there. We'll see that that's a little lower now because some of it was paid off. How about everything else? Can we just fill down all of these numbers and formulas? We want to make sure that the APR and payment percent stay the same. We'll notice a slightly lower finance charge because of the lower balance, and also a smaller payment amount. Now here's the thing, we're getting a little bit less debt decrease. So ideally we would just keep paying the same payment and see that debt decrease actually increase, meaning we're paying off more and more of the debt as that finance charge isn't as big of a factor. But this is kind of the problem with credit cards then, is we'll sort of see this diminishing factor as we go. And I'm not sure how long it's going to take. I can fill it down a bunch and see how things go. I'm seeing that after 40 payments, we're down in the 6,000 range. It might take hundreds of payments. Let's go to row 200 here, or even row 201. So that was after a couple hundred payments, and we still have $3,000. The debt decrease is getting smaller and smaller here as we go, and so you're really not good with just paying the minimum. It's good if you can set an amount and stick with it. Imagine if we stayed at 157.58. I'll just type it in the next row here and bring that down. So I'm going to reconfigure that as $1. So now I'm going to fill down that with a fixed payment. We'll see how that changes things. And I went down a couple hundred rows, so let's do the same thing. And this time actually it was paid off quite a while ago. So now I can go back. I'm in the negatives here. That thing was paid off after just 105 some payments. So you can see that's a lot better if you stick with a set payment amount. I will go back and undo that a few steps here. Probably don't need to fill it down quite so far. So there's just a couple rows of it there. And the last thing I'll show you is very similar to this. It has to do with mortgage payments. We could go back to this spreadsheet right here. We see a lot of information there, but I think it might make more sense to just start with a brand new one. This is going to be an amortization table, which is the payoff of a mortgage. Here I'm going to add a column for the payment number, which might have been helpful in that last one for the credit card loan payoff. And here we'll have some inputs, kind of like we had before. Now I'm going to get the part out of the way of just the down payment. Let's just focus on the loan amount specifically. And I'll just call it the previous balance for the first input. And it'll make a little more sense why we're starting with that one. It's kind of similar to this last loan payoff problem. Then I'm going to keep this simple. I'm really just going to have the finance charge, the payment amount, and then we'll have the new balance. And you can also find that debt reduction. And I usually just start with a 0, payment number 0, no previous balance, no finance charge, no payment amount, and just basically put the amount financed for this new balance. It's just the way that I like to do it to set it up. Why don't I use a problem with just some made up figures here, like a $400,000 mortgage. The down payment's already been accounted for. Now, I like to center those dashes in the middle just to show that we're not using those, and same thing here with debt reduction. We're not using that yet. Now I'm going to establish the rule that we're going to use for all the rest of it. We're always going to take the new balance from before and use that as a previous balance and base our calculations on that. But what it does is it creates kind of a seed cell up top here where we can just change that and change all the results below. I also like to create another seed cell off to the side, which is my APR. I won't be filling that one down. I'll just put in a percent, for example, of 3.4%. Might be a first-time buyer getting a nice loan. Could be, if you do, I think it's a HSA loan or something like that. They'll give you a nice rate. Now we'll calculate the finance charge. That will be that previous balance times our APR. Put a $sign in front of that 2. So that way when we fill it down later, it won't move that one. And then we'll divide it by 12. That's a monthly rate. So there's the finance charge in that first month, pretty high. Payment amount we'll do equals PMT. And this time I'm not going to put a negative in front. Our rate is that 3.4%. Again, use a $sign in front of the 2, divided by 12. Number of periods. Oh, it might actually be good to have a seed for that. Although if we do monthly payments for 30 years, we could just put in a 360 for that, as long as we're always doing that same type of loan. The future value is 0. Excuse me. And the present value is the new balance. I should have that first. Use that $sign. We want to just tie it to that very first beginning new balance, and the future value 0 to pay off the whole thing. There's my payment amount. That is going to be deducted. I'll actually leave that as negative this time. And now my new balance is the previous balance plus the finance charge. And I'll add this negative payment amount to reduce it down. My debt reduction is the difference between actually just one above the other right here. The new balances month to month. That one doesn't get brought down, but now the rest of these can. And you can try just starting it, but a lot of times we'll have a problem here with this one just repeating. So I would actually recommend typing a 2 first, fill down one row, and now highlight both the 1 and the 2 and everything across. Fill it down until you get to row 362, because we have 360 payments, row 0, and a header. Should be 362 total. We see that thing paying exactly to 0, which is really perfect. That's just what we want. If it doesn't equal 0, we might have to make an adjustment to the last payment. Instead of using this formula, we might just have to figure out what it would need to be to zero it out. And we see that in the beginning, the finance charge is high and the debt reduction is low. And by the end, the loan doesn't have much left on it. Finance charge is low, debt reduction's high. And that's really a lot better way to pay off a loan than that minimum payment, which is kind of a diminishing amount as we go.